Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurudeva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Narayana. Hari Om and greetings from Niagara Falls. Pritivyam na ashru patayet. This is what our Upanishads teach. In English, this means Pritivyam, the earth, to the earth, and na, not, ashru, show me ashru, tears. Patayet means fall. In other words, we should not cry. And here you have to interpret crying, not just the physical act of crying. Shuka cries all the time, Vyasa cries all the time. It's the stress, the anxiety, the sadness. We shouldn't be feeling that. We shouldn't be causing that. But how? Such a profound and deep message. How are we supposed to live that practically? We fall to crying if we don't check criticizing. Yes? So the practical way to not cry is to not criticize. To see the strengths rather than the weaknesses. To be appreciative rather than to be expecting. Now that too is a deep and profound message. How do I work my way to that? By not complaining. Focusing on one's responsibilities, on being healthy. These 3 C's, crying, criticizing, and complaining, can end once and for all. We can live the message of the Upanishad if we know that our nature is contentment. The I that you use verbally, the I that you feel, the fabric of that I is contentment. Now what's fascinating about this, if you remember our last class, I went through every course that we've explored together. Every one of us already knows that our nature, that I, is contentment. Why is it that I still complain then and criticize and cry? We don't know our nature. We only believe our nature is contentment. There's a large gap between belief and knowing. The belief has to evolve to faith. The faith has to evolve to trust. The trust has to evolve to knowing. And what helps all of this evolution? Practice. Application. This is the vision of our course. We know how to chant Gita. We know the story of Gita. How are we supposed to live this? Arjuna attracts Achyuta. Prince Arjuna is going through an identity crisis. In this identity crisis, he is Arjuna. Arjuna here means Arjavam. He is simple. He is straightforward. He is honest. And that's what attracts Achyuta to him. The word Achyuta means the one who never falls, the one who has no crisis, the one who knows herself, himself. And that's a beautiful match. If Arjuna doesn't know who he is, he doesn't know his nature, his I, if he goes to someone else who also doesn't know, there'll be no discovery there. But he asks for help from the one who does know, that is Achyuta. How we're relating to this. Applying Gita in evolving. We too are experiencing a crisis. We don't know that we are joy. And we want to evolve from that. So how? How do we do this? We took up Shloka 7 of Adhyaya 2. And in this shloka, what Bhagavan Krishna is guiding Prince Arjuna in, eventually, is to not take your thoughts for granted. Do not take your thoughts for granted. And how does this shloka teach this? He starts off by sharing that I'm experiencing this pity, but he's not experiencing pity, correct? He's justifying his vice. Then dharma. He's Arjuna, the dharmic one, but maybe he doesn't know what dharma is. He tells Bhagavan Krishna, guide me definitively. I need your thoughts to help my thoughts. And finally, he says, I am your disciple. That I'm going to be as responsible as possible. Don't take your thoughts for granted. Don't take anything for granted. It encourages us to think deeply, and the deeper we think about objective matters about the world, the more deeply we'll think about subjective matters about ourselves. This is our first step in applying Gita through evolving. We continue. We're now on chapter 8. And we are going to take up verse 24. Chapter 8, verse 24. I'll give you all time to find that. That's me being large-hearted, that all of you have come prepared with your physical copy of Bhagavad Gita. I see all of you are going to your computers to pull it up virtually. And then you're looking at the writing and not me. This meter is shorter. I'm sure you can just remember. Agnir Jyotir Aha Shuklaha. Agnir Jyotir Aha Shuklaha. Shanmasa Uttarayanam. Shanmasa Uttarayanam. Tatra Prayata Gacchanti. Tatra Prayata Gacchanti. Brahma Brahma Vido Janaha. Brahma Brahma Vido Janaha. What is shared here? In simple words. Agnihi means fire. Jyotihi means light. Ahaha, day. Shuklaha, bright. So, how did these words help us apply Gita and evolve? Okay, so think. Agnihi here is to be felt as grace. When you have an activity that you love to do. You feel that fire inside of you. You don't want to rest. You don't want to sleep. So Agnihi, I want you to feel as grace. Jyotihi, light or morning. If you feel that grace, what time are you waking up? You're awake to greet light. You're awake to greet light. When I drive Vyasa in the morning to his preschool, he always looks for the moon. It's so fascinating how little his conditionings are, any toddler. In the morning we look for the sun, he's looking for the moon. And he couldn't find it, but when we were walking to class, he found the moon and he kept on saying, bye moon, I'm going to class. And it made me think again about greeting the moon, and this shloka is saying, greet the sun. Ahaha, the day, this is iconic for being energetic. That once the day begins, that one has to be energetic, not lethargic. Shuklaha means bright. This is the waxing of the moon, the building, the build up. Okay? And I'm going to share this one more time. Fire is grace. Once you feel that fire, you should wake up. Wake up when? Before the sun rises. The day, you should be energetic. And Shuklaha here means growth. Like the moon grows in what we can see, that we should be growing also. Okay, next. Shanmasa Uttarayanam. Shanmasa means 6 months of ayana, path, uttara. Uttara means rising or northern. It can also be taken literally. What this is indicative of is momentum. Momentum. Grace, morning, energetic, growth, momentum. That grace should be leading us to momentum. Once you have momentum, you can't stop. And this continues. Tatra prayata gachanti. For someone who is evolving, for someone who feels this thought to change, that person will go. Gachanti. Now, where will they go? Tell me, through this course, where will you go? We'll all go to California because they have a cool governor and other states don't? Is that where we're going to go? We're going to go to Iceland. We're going to go to Antarctica. We're going to go to Bharat because that's where Gita was taught. Go here means change or evolve. Go here means going inside. To evolve from being an extrovert to being an introvert. To evolve from being someone who seeks attention to someone who seeks intention. How far is this going? For you to evolve from being external looking for happiness to being internally looking for that happiness, how far do you have to go? A fine way to understand this is when you're dreaming and you wake up, how far is that? How long is that? It's immediate. It's experiential. That's the gachanti. And finally, Brahma vido janaha. Who gets to experience all of this? Those people who know Brahman, those people who know existence, awareness, joy, those are the people who find existence, awareness, joy. They rediscover this. This is a subtle point. On Tuesdays, we study meditation and life. And out of all of the weekly classes we have, that's the most demanding. And I find that people enjoy that the least because it's too demanding on them. But I purposefully have created that bhava, that flow, because in meditation and life, I'm trying to encourage the students there to be more and more and more independent. Less support. Okay. So now, suppose you want to be a meditator. Right? It's a very popular thing to do. It's a great description when you're applying for a job or on shadi.com. Marry me, I'm a meditator. If you have no relationship with Bhagavan, if you have no relationship with a Sadguru, if you don't know what the self is, what will you be meditating on? No. There has to be content there. There has to be a subject there for you to meditate upon. And if you don't know it, all you'll be meditating upon is your blood flow or your breath flow or watching the thoughts. And that's all therapeutic, but it's not transcendental. And that's why this line about only those people who know Brahman, even intellectually like we're doing, only those people rediscover that nature, that I, as being contentment. As we think more about how Bhagavad Gita helps us to evolve, in this one shloka we see how our day should be. And I'm using the word day, but there's actually certain periods of time that are highlighted here. Agnihi, as if, is a minute. You wake up at a particular minute, correct? You don't wake up at a particular hour, you wake up at a particular minute. Then Jyotihi, that's a particular hour. So you have a minute, you have an hour. Ahaha, that's a day. Shuklaha, that's a week, correct? Then Masa becomes month. So now how come they don't have year here? How come they don't have decade and century? So 6 months, then done, finished. What is being indicated here is that once one starts to put in effort to evolve, this has to be all the time. This has to be full time. And one cautionary note here, we all do this. You know when you have a good day at work or a good day at school, or even you felt like you were noble all day, what do you do at night? Do you go to sleep earlier or do you stay up later? Do you eat less or do you eat more? I feel like we're very much a reward-oriented society, even in our spiritual efforts, isn't it? We always want to be rewarded. And that's such a subtle expression that we engage in. It's that sattvic ego. That this is good enough. But this shloka is saying that's not good enough. It's be Brahman or bust. There's no stopping until one reaches or rediscovers who they are. So these are our first two shlokas on applied Gita and evolving. The first highlighting honesty, the second highlighting simplicity. To be able to wake up before the sun, to be energetic, to not break your momentum, you have to simplify your lifestyle. To understand the fullness of this shloka, the next shloka has to be included, and we're not going to study that, but the opposite path is indicated. This is called the path of the sun. The next verse will highlight the path of the moon. Now think deeply about this, otherwise we get caught in rituals. The moon. Does the moon have independent light? Yes or no? No. Does the sun have independent light? Yes. And that's the main difference. Those who follow the path of the moon, they are following dependent joy. In very worldly terms, that's called the path of materialism. They're living for valuables. Whereas the path of the sun is a path of independent joy. That's the path of values. How Swami Chinmayananda would describe this is the path of the sun is raising your standard of life, and the path of the moon is raising your standard of living. And in a ritualistic way, there's lots that is shared in this chapter about if you die, if the last breath you take is during a certain period, then it helps your evolution. If you die during another period, it doesn't help your evolution. How is that even possible? If I die in November, I've worked my whole life to evolve, but I happen to die in November, that I'm not going to evolve into a better body. That's why it's so important to study this in an application-oriented way. What are you doing with your time? Yes, I've highlighted that in so many ways. A minute, an hour, a day, a week, a month. Is your time being invested into valuables or values? That will determine how you die. Let's read this shloka together. Agnir Jyotiraha Shuklaha Shanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Brahma Vido Janaha. Narayana.